One of the things I get asked a lot is, what are the intentions beyond the roundtables? So we do the roundtables, and then what? And that's the absolute right question to ask. But in order to answer that question, we probably have to back up, and we have to align our vision in terms of what we believe our mission and our purpose is. Now, when we talk about the mission and purpose of USCAL generally and USCAL specifically, then we must go to the three things that have been set in place and are even part of the USCAL logo, and that is access, exposure, and dialogue. Now, we came up with those three things because in a survey of the last 20 years of our existence, we asked ourselves, what do we do well? What are we able to do and accomplish realistically? And what we came up with are those three things: that we can provide our members with access to one another, access to people that otherwise perhaps we would never meet. We would provide them with exposure to new ideas, new systems, new ways of thinking, and dialogue. And that is the opportunity to sit down with someone and actually dialogue about what we intend to do or about what they're doing. Now, I can hear the critics in my head. One of the things that someone says is, oh, we got to stop talking about it and do it. And I would agree. But an uneducated doer is a failure. An unprepared doer is a loser. Jesus said, you must count the costs first. Nobody builds a tower without first counting the cost. And what is counting the cost? Counting the cost is to be able to talk to someone, to be able to figure out what you're doing, to be able to plan for what it is you want to build. And so we might even say that Jesus in that parable might align with what we're saying, that before you build a building, have some access to people that have built buildings before. Expose yourself to those ideas and get an opportunity to listen to these people that have done it before and strike up the conversation. Let's have that conversation with people. And I think about how many people try and fail to flip a house, and they think they can do it because they watch 3 episodes of Chip and Joanna Gaines, or they've watched some episodes of HGTV, and those people do it in 30 minutes, for goodness sake. And so it's just so easy. Go find a house, remodel it, put it on the market, and make $150,000. And people who enter into the doing without exposure, access, and dialogue are bound to failure because they don't have the experience and the necessary even skills in some case, but they don't know that they don't have the skills because there's a human phenomenon that is described as we don't know what we don't know. And so we go into things not knowing what we don't know until we get in the middle of something, then it's like, good grief, I never even thought about that. Well, you can avoid a lot of those headaches with exposure, access, and dialogue. So let's not degrade or think lowly of the fact that we can give our members access, exposure, and dialogue because it's very, very important. But let's not ignore what it is that Gary Carter has written in this newsletter. That on the backside of this, on the backside of exposure, access, and dialogue, there is an opportunity for the doing. Now, that doing must happen on a tactical level, not a strategic level. The strategic level is just that. It's for the strategies to be talked about, to be debated, to be created. The tactical level, in military terms, that's boots on the ground. That's where the mission is executed. That's where the soldiers actually perform what it is that has been strategically planned by their superiors on the strategic level. And on the tactical level, that's the doing. But the thing about the doing is it must happen locally. You can't do this from the strategic level. You know, the generals probably don't even carry guns into their meetings. Why would they? That's not what they are there for. But the ones that carry the guns, the rifles, the ones that actually execute the mission, do it on a local level. And so most of the visions, the missions, the things we want to accomplish, they must happen, they must take place, they must be executed on a local level, which means, local church or a group of churches, perhaps in a city, maybe in a region. Here in the United States, it would be maybe a region of a state, perhaps. But it's on that local level that you actually execute the mission. And in my response to what Gary has written, I would just say, well done, Gary. This is brilliant. We had a conversation. I, in fact, asked him, I said, Gary, would you please write down what you just said to me? And I want to put that out in this newsletter, because on the backside of Access, Exposure, and Dialogue, on the backside of what we can accomplish in our roundtables, there is an opportunity for us to tactically execute a mission or fulfill a vision. There is the doing. Yes, there is the doing. Just so long as we have enough access, exposure, and dialogue to make sure that we're not naive in the doing, in the execution of that mission. The way that Gary describes it, I think, is just exactly as he kind of employs his strategic way of looking at the world, where he listed these specific things, and we have them kind of illustrated as blocks built on each other, is that we learn to connect with each other. That's what we do in our roundtables. Then we trust one another. And it takes time to build trust, but trust means that the walls have been let down, the barriers have been put down, and maybe some of the rumors that we've heard about this person, maybe they're overblown, because after all, they've been at a round table and they seem like pretty reasonable people. That happens. And then if we trust someone, then maybe we can dream with them. We can have a vision together. We can talk about what could be accomplished together, just throwing it out there. Now, after the vision stage, if we just proceed with this relationship, we probably will then, fourthly, draw a strategy. Like, yeah, we put together the plans, the step by step by step by step. And then comes the point where we're going to execute that strategy. We actually see this come into reality. And that's not an easy thing, by the way. I mean, I've been around long enough to know that not everyone that is able to put together a strategy can actually execute that strategy. Because when you move from the strategic to the tactical, there's a different skill set in leadership that's necessary. And it's kind of the difference between someone higher up, let's say a general or a colonel or a major, perhaps in the military, and the non-commissioned officer, that sergeant that is down there grunting it out with his troops, right? Down there in the mud and the guts and the blood with the troops, executing the mission that was created by his superiors. And so those are two different skill sets. So even if we have access, exposure, and dialogue, and we connect, and we trust, and we dream, and then we set up a strategy, boy, that last step, bring it into reality, that's still a different skill set altogether. Not everybody that creates a strategy is able to execute it. But I believe that apostolic leaders do, because we build teams, right? We put people around us that can. So that's my response. I thought it was just brilliant. Gary Carter, a good friend of ours, has been a long-time member of USCAL from Canada. A good friend of mine and Nikki's. Him and Kim are great people. Their daughter, their family's just a great family, and he's a great church planter and apostolic leader. You need to get to know Gary, all right? So that's my response.